well, unmarkedness is another originally linguistic topic that, if extended in its principle, or when its principle is understood more broadly, it may refer to many other domains of communication or interaction in general, because it breaks down, when you think about it, it breaks down or boils down to attention and non-attention, which are the cornerstones of any interaction. Again, what we're facing here is another case of two sides of the same coin, where it's only the point of view that we are speaking from makes the difference. Markedness and unmarkedness, I mean, we barely can say that there is a text that exists without being perceived. So what we have is the author. What we have is two key components of any interaction. There's the author that makes his strategic choices when equipping his text with either, besides content and form, of course, that equips his texts with either elements that are conform to the norm, or that are deviating from the norm. That approaches his text either in the sense of complying with the norm or violating the norm. In some places he complies, in other places he opts to not comply. This is linked with his strategic decision, the aim of which, of course, is to impress or impact on the reader, on the perceiver of his text. And the other point, the other key moment is every such event or situation in which the text produced by the author that stands at the disposal of almost anyone, or the chosen ones, or whatever, is perceived by his perceiver, where obviously, like, each moment, each instant of perception is unique. Each new reading is a new moment of text being realized, coming into existence. So basically, we have, on the one hand, we have the author's strategy and decision when creating the text. On the other hand, we have the moment when his text is perceived, be it one-off text or instantaneous text, like as a conversation, dialogue, which never repeats, be it a book that repeats in its realization every time it is read by the reader. Not only because the reader, because the reader enters this text perception or being exposed to this text with always new experience, but not only because of that. Simply because this happens in time. And each new linearly temporal experience of perceiving a text is a unique matter, opportunity, event of its own. Now, markedness and unmarkedness, that was started large, let's say, brought to the world by Prague Circle linguists around Nikolai Trubetskoy in 1920s, and primarily revolving around so-called minimal pairs in phonetics or phonology. Basically tells us how the situation is on the level of the theoretically frozen solid text that anyway, I mean, would have to be somehow perceived by the by the perceiver in order to make it functional. But it's more or less the author side of the thing. When such a text is created, I mean, to have on his mind what is marked and what is unmarked, where to use the marked thing, where to use the unmarked one. And if this is the author side of the thing, then logically the other side of the thing, the other side of the same coin, the readers, recipients or perceiver side, would be attention or non-attention. Attention, obviously, in the moment when markedness was applied, when marked, untraditional, unexpected, unpredictable, unpredicted, unassumed, unanticipated element has been used by the author, and as such was received or perceived by the reader or recipient. And inattention, in the moment when the author opted to place in his text something common, normal, banal, as art theoreticians say, or like to say. Banality, non-banality, is basically an artistic or literature theory or text analysis extension, notion extension for what markedness, unmarkedness stood for at its beginnings, making the distinction between phonetic or phonologic pairs or elements. Again, in my opinion, we're still talking about the same thing, which goes back to the simple, let's say, conclusion or observation that the more unexpected elements the author has inserted in his text, the bigger the surprise, the bigger the feeling of contradiction, conflict, unexpectation or expectancy violation on the side of the recipient of his text. The bigger his surprise, the bigger obviously his arousal and all consequent reactions in his brain up to him, his mental structure, luck, situation, environment, place, timing, and many other factors, including the announcement of an event coming that should be, for example, of an artistic value or aesthetic value, such as completely mundane things like posters, selling of tickets, entering the hall where a concert, ballet, opera, whatever is to take place. All these more or less participate in the final result, preconceived somewhere in the past by the author and socially channeled, culturally channeled into each other, each one of such texts recipients. Obviously, other terms can be used, such as Ernst Gombrich's comment on what attention is, what attention consists on. It's like bringing everything to the foreground. Leaving everything unessential in the background of that each particular scene that is to be perceived, and bringing everything that is to be the focus of the recipient's attention to the foreground. This doesn't mean taking an actor or a singer literally in front of the stage while all other musicians stay in the background, but it's one of the instances. It was one of the examples. It has to be taken figuratively. That means only such authors succeed in drawing or catching the spectators, recipients, perceivers' attention, who manage to efficiently distinguish between what is foreground and what is background, and what is supposed to be in the foreground and what is supposed to stay in the background at each particular suitable, of course, moment of their texts being perceived. So basically we can say goal is, of all these contrasts, of all these notions that have been used by theoreticians on the journey of identifying the simple difference between attention and inattention, which is the final result anyway on the part of the recipient. All of them can be summarized that practically the practical goal or end of conversation is to interaction, cultural presentation, to draw attention there where needed and there where desired, while the method is to either take something what would otherwise remain banal, which means that would stay in the foreground, because the foreground is not an existing foreground. That's the foreground, background, that would otherwise stay in the background, with which it's here meant not the background, not an existing one, but the background of the text's recipient's attention. And that should be taken from there, because that's the place where banalities, normal things that do not draw attention in normal situations stay or remain or is supposed to stay, and that from there should be taken somehow, placed into the recipient's foreground. How that is made, that's up to the author. How something unusual, something unexpected, something norm or expectation violating is placed onto this otherwise banal element is up to those who create the texts. That is one option. The other option is basically the same, because there are only few things that are non-banal on their own. Most unusual things are combinations of otherwise banal elements, normal ones, and it's the combinations that have something special about them, something unexpected or attention drawing. So the other option would be to place in the foreground something that is unusual, that is unexpected, and that is guaranteed to draw the recipient's attention. But basically, we're still talking about the same principle. Whether banal or non-banal thing is made, is taken from the background of the recipient's attention to his foreground, which is the way as is done by the author of the text. It doesn't matter anymore whether the thing is banal or non-banal, but the fact of successfully placing it into the foreground of the text, that means in such a way that the recipient's perception reacts to it, or mind after perceiving it, such as stimulus, his mind reacts to it with a corresponding arousal, then the goal has been achieved. And while the principle of it consists in how successful, or the criterion of the author being successful in this consists in how elaborate, how ingenious or industrious the author is, in namely choosing, taking, and placing such an element in such a way that such a placement is evaluated by its recipient's mind as the real foreground, as the real attention catcher. In general, this part of let's say theoretical explanation can be considered some subclass or tool of a higher operational or strategical plan of the author, but I think it's good and it's convenient to identify these basic differences or these basic, let's say, dualities between what's marked and what's unmarked, what's banal, what's non-banal, what's foreground and background, and to see that, again, in all these cases, we basically speak about the same. And it's namely the implementation of something that is either made unusual or it is unusual, and it's placed in the text in such a way that everything else in contrast to it becomes a background, while this element catches all the attention because it's marked, because it's non-banal, because it's in the foreground, because all eyes or perception is on it. And this is namely the point where, again, in most cases, this topic borders on norm or expectancy violation, and obviously artistic or aesthetic experience, the recipient of such texts or of a series of such norm or expectancy violations is getting.